So if we say that character is the vehicle, story is the road,
Yeah.
how did you come up with that?
Okay, so this idea of there's the character, there's the protagonist, and then there is the obstacles. So I began to think about like, obstacles are basically everything we experience in life. All the conflicts we experience start to take on a kind of character. And they start to be like whenever we enter. So for example, when you enter like a boardroom and you're surrounded by peers as well as, you know, maybe a boss or a high-end producer or a talent that you really respect. And you walk into that room becomes its own moral sphere and it takes on its own character. You know, you tend to see like, oh, who's sitting at the head of the table? Who's the person that's leaning back and relaxed and in control? Who's the person that's eager and leaning in and trying to prove themselves? And you unconsciously start to see all of these relationships. Now, what I started looking at was, you know, you mentioned that around the world, we all develop different virtues, different values, different cultures. And culture is defined by the stories we tell. Those are the borders of culture. If you tell a story to somebody outside of your culture, it might not resonate on the same level. Or it will have a different kind of resonance, you know, depending on how it's tapped into it. And what I noticed was, you know, this ties into, it's not moral relativity because, you know, relativity ultimately just says it doesn't matter. There is no hierarchy of morals. But ultimately, it is a kind of recognition that in every venue, in every situation, you have a kind of moral sphere that defines the rules of survival. And those rules of survival becomes the conflicts you choose, that you have to negotiate in order to survive in that world. Most character arc is interested in what do you have to transform about yourself to survive inside that world. And so each conflict teaches you to adjust your values. So what I started to see was character, like ultimately, as a storyteller, you want to go on the road. You want to say, hey, let's go see all these amazing things, these conflicts, these incredible experiences, these incredible spectacle. That's the road where you're going to be going. The vehicle, the character, is the thing that's going to experience those conflicts with you. It's going to drive you along the way. And it's through the values of the character that come into conflict with the road, with those spectacles and conflicts, that get you to experience it. It's not just tourism. You're not just going to see, you're going to experience it. And that's the difference between like a protagonist and a tourist. A tourist will go and just look at all the things, maybe they'll buy a few souvenirs. But a protagonist engages the world and experiences rites of passage. They become a part, integrated into the world by integrating the values of that world into themselves.
Right. You know, and you could think it'd be regional too. You could come to Hollywood as a tourist, go to Hollywood and Highland, and be wowed by all this stuff.
Yeah.
But to live here and to have to, let's say you work at Hollywood and Highland, now you have to make your way through the crowd and the parking structure, and it's an entirely different experience. And it's regional too. Could be tech world. There's different virtues there. Hollywood, different things. Farmland, you know, the Rust Belt, whatever, things that won't be regarded in the same way. If you took that same behavior, Hollywood or the tech world, and brought them to the heartland, you could be pushed out.
Actually, that's a good example. Like an example I use in the book is that I draw two distinct moral spheres as, you know, like urban life versus rural life. You know, and I include suburban life as part of urban life. And part of it, one of the defining features of the moral sphere of the urban life is that you don't really have much interaction with your neighbors. You don't have much emotional connection to them. They're virtually strangers, and yet they live right next door to you. You don't know what their ups and downs are. And because of that, you feel less concerned about what they think of you. And because of that, there's a kind of apathy that starts to fill. You walk down the street, you see someone begging for food, which if you saw that anywhere else, if that happened to someone you knew, You'd fall down the tiers, throw yourself on their feet, pick them up, scoop them up, and take them to a restaurant and feed them and take care of them. But because you start seeing that a lot, and you're in the city and you don't know them, you start thinking, wait, are they going to take advantage of me? What if I want to give them $1 and then they pull a knife on me or stick me with a needle? Then it starts to turn into your defenses. So the values you develop in the city will be totally different than the values you develop in a rural environment.
Right.
Where, rural environments tend to be, farmers. They tend to be smaller. They all tend to know each other. They know everything about each other intergenerationally.
Right.
So if you do something in the downtown area and you screw up and crash your car or you're drunk driving,
they're going to know about
everyone's going to know.
Right.
And everyone's going to care, and they're all going to have an opinion about it, And both have their pluses and minuses. But they're clearly different moral spheres. You have to adopt different moral values to survive in one. So the classic character arc is, the country mouse that goes to the city. They come with country values and have to learn what it's like to survive in the city, and then vice versa.
Right, whereas the city person might see everything as, here's our big T word, transactional.
Yeah, there you go.
The country mouse might be, it's about honor and doing the right thing, you would hope, and could end up going for quite a ride when you're dealing with people that see everything as transactional.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
for example, like the city person, perfect example is I was working on a film and it was in a production in Utah. So I'd never lived out there, and I just got an apartment out there, and all of a sudden my neighbors were like, someone was knocking on my door, total stranger, saying, hey, we need some help with this grass up here. You're a big, strong guy. Can you just help us put all the grass down?
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like, I'm busy. I can't do that. I got to take a call. And they're like, no, the truck's here. We need you to come. And I was like, I ended up just going, I guess I'm working on someone's lawn right now. I don't know what's going on. And at first my feeling was to dismiss it and say I'm private. I'm a private person. You don't do that. Where I come from, you don't just knock on someone's door and say, hey, come work on my lawn. Then the interesting thing is when I was doing that, all the neighbors came out and were like, oh, you got the backhoe out. And they're all working on the lawn together, and it became this social experience. And my instinct was to kind of be like, I don't know if I like this, And slowly I was like, oh, this is how they take care of each other. Everybody knows, and all of a sudden I became connected to the neighborhood. I was like, I'm just renting an apartment here. I don't really need to connect with these people. But it became a communal experience. So that was kind of my small arc with that community. And I think that's what we're interested in with these stories is so many stories we're seeing right now are, you see the characters, you say, here's the person who is this, and they maintain that same virtue, that same value all the way through the story. And that's why we're getting all these boring characters that are we knew what they were the second they presented themselves. And guess what? They're going to make this decision every single time. You always have, the jealous boyfriend who always acts petty and silly and ends up, guess what, sabotaging the relationship. And then, the girl goes off to the sweet loving guy. And we're like, that's not interesting. We've seen that a million times. But on top of that, it doesn't really speak to any truth. You have to always believe that jealous, petty boyfriend is always petty and jealous. There's no humanity or depth to him. Right. And therefore, it's not surprising.
And you just jogged my memory in terms of the sort of the city person going to the country, because when I was in my early 20s, I did go to sort of farmland area, and there were other people my age, and they did know about a car accident and all the dynamics behind it because they were listening to the CB radio. And so everyone was talking about it, even though it's so spread out and it would take miles to drive to the next person's house. But because of that, and I had never been exposed to that world before, having grown up in suburbia or the big city. Yeah. So you just jogged my memory of that.
Did you feel like your boundaries were kind of being invaded a little bit?
Well, yeah, and I was also a fish out of water, and it turned out they were talking about me too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I found out, but I didn't realize that. I just thought, hey, these places are spread out, and it's farmland, and they don't care about me. Well, no, it was because I didn't look the part. I didn't fit in. Yeah. I knew somebody that was from there, and their family was, and that's why we went. But I didn't realize that it was all connected like that. So you just jogged my memory. So yeah, you're right. Different regional. Maybe I struck them as odd because of my city values or whatever. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that I offended someone.
Yeah, and it takes that kind of maturation to be like, oh, okay, it's not just me. You know, it'd be the self, like the less mature way of going about it would be like, oh, well, they're wrong because they're judging me. You know, and then we just have endless stories about this one martyr who is just completely misunderstood by everyone around them. When, you know, the more interesting thing is, you know, what if it actually revealed your contradictions, you know, and then in so doing, they revealed their contradictions and then learned to, you know, Gilmore Girls is a great example. Like, I'm a huge fan of Gilmore Girls. I love it. The showrunner of Gilmore Girls, like, she has such regard and affection for every character on there that they all become human. They all have depth. And like, you know, the conflict between Lorelai and her mother, you're so easily tempted to just say, well, the mom's wrong because she's a snobbish elitist. But then they go and give depth to her and show how much she loves her husband and how kind they are to each other and how deep down inside she just wants her daughter to survive but doesn't have the tools to communicate to her. And you start to see the way they build out the whole community. Everybody has those contradictions. Like, if you want to understand great character, go watch Gilmore Girls. Not the movies, though. I did love the movies. The first 7 series, absolutely beautiful.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.